Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. I'm just this dude named Brando that's like out here reading fucking news clips to people that normally don't even bother looking at weed news, but for some reason I might have piqued their interest. Like I'm almost nearing the second year being on this platform doing this channel, and we're getting close to 2,000 subscribers, and my videos views are increasing, and I know that fucking YouTube has been suppressing me the whole time I've been out here, and that these number counts are bullshit that we're seeing. But you know what, man, I just want to let everybody know one more time, I'm not out here doing this for fame and fortune, all right? If you think that's what I'm about, you haven't fucking been around. You don't just go back and look at my videos. Look at the titles, look at what I do. This has nothing to do with me trying to get like a fucking, YouTube fortunes and shit. I don't even get paid. My videos wouldn't even get monetized if I wanted them to. Come on. Be real. Anyway, back to the news. So my channel's been around for about 2 years, and in that time there's been this evolution of this thing where fentanyl has been showing up in everything. All right. And I mean, to the point where at first I didn't even believe it, and then I started seeing evidence that this shit ain't a joke. This isn't media hype. This is real. There is fentanyl laced cocaine on the streets killing people. I just did a story recently about fentanyl laced cocaine being found by people that basically have drug testing kits available at festivals as a harm reduction method, and they were finding fentanyl and cocaine. Then we heard, I guess, okay, so this story is older. This is not a new headline. This isn't some new story that just happened. Apparently, this isn't even the first time that fentanyl was found in LSD. But now they found, fentanyl in basically everything. Next thing you know, it's going to be like glyphosate, where they find it in cereal and it's just going to be everywhere. I mean, they're just going to airdrop it from the sky, I guess. I don't understand how this is happening or why. At first, like I said, I didn't even believe it. And some of my clips were like, are you fucking kidding? You're not finding fentanyl in marijuana. Why would you? First of all, there's just absolutely no reason to lace marijuana with fentanyl. And, people that said they died because they smoked some marijuana and it was laced with fentanyl, the case that I read was kind of suspicious. Like maybe they were doing heroin or something, and I don't even know. But this is just getting to the point where it's like I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theory nut guy again, but there's a running conspiracy in like the anti-drug war community that the government actually is responsible for a lot of the drugs being here via the CIA, which you might have heard of, the cocaine into America thing. And there's legitimate former CIA agents who have come forward and detailed this operation of cocaine into America during the 80s, during the Iran-Contra affair. So this is all documented in congressional hearings and shit, that it actually was a thing where we were trading arms and money and training for Contra soldiers for cocaine. Which was, and then we have further evidences and testimony that was discovered by, the investigative journalist Webb, who talked to this guy named Freeway Ricky Ross, who indicated some Sandinistan guy, nationalist, that was providing him with, basically fronting him cocaine. And then the guy actually showed him how to turn the cocaine into rock cocaine or crack. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is real shit. And when it comes to heroin, you can look at like how the Vietnam War started. Well, before the Vietnam War, we were involved in this thing called Air America, which was a bunch of former airplanes used by the government, and a front group that the CIA had called Air America was basically taking over the heroin trade from the French. It's well documented. There's even a fucking movie that's like a comedy made about it. That's how stupidly out in the open this shit is. So it's not that big of a conspiracy theory to start wondering how come you're seeing fentanyl showing up in shit like LSD, cocaine, meth. You know, like there's no logic explanation. You can't just use logic and be like, well, you know, there's this drug dealer who wants to get people hooked on their product, so they put fentanyl in it, so you come back to get more quicker. And no, that doesn't work for things like LSD and meth and cocaine, because those things are not drugs that you would want to, like, you'd be, you know, laid back and mellow on. Those are drugs that get you up and going. So anyway, I wasn't the first one that thought about this. Like, this isn't my complete idea to be like, why in the fuck are we seeing this shit pop up in everything? And then, you know, like, and I'm an older person. I'm like 47, so I'm like, maybe, just maybe, it's because the fentanyl is put in these drugs that we've heard that the government has something to do with the widespread availability of, especially heroin and cocaine. Like, those things aren't even produced in America. Like, LSD you can produce in America, meth you can produce in America. When it comes to cocaine and heroin, those things are produced offshore. So in order for the supply line to be so steady, you would have to have some pretty successful smuggling operations going on a wide scale basis, where either they're outsmarting the $80 billion a year effort that we have to stop drugs from coming into the country. And that includes everything from Coast Guards to local police getting money for this shit to the DEA's budget, everything considered. We spend about $80 billion, and you're telling me that enough heroin and cocaine leaks into this country to make sure that every addict in this country can get their fix without missing a beat, without ever hearing that, oh, you know what, there's a dry spell because there was a big bust and blah, blah, blah. Either the drug war is a complete fucking failure, which we all know it is, and that these agencies are fucking trying their hardest but still can't seem to even slow the flow down enough to make any addict go without their hit for one Jones. We're supposed to believe the fucking government doesn't have anything to do with the drugs actually making it in. Either they're complicit in the fucking smuggling and corruption, as we've seen over and over and over again. Like, we've seen where the DEA goes down to Colombia to, you know, try to regulate the shit going on there with all the cocaine production and the cartels. And what did we find out they were doing? Partying. Same with the CIA. Like, what? There was actually a scandal with the CIA where people, you know, the heads was supposed to roll, but then they didn't. And everybody got promotions. So we don't know what's going on with this drug war and how shady it is. But what we don't understand is how all this fentanyl is popping up and all this other shit. It's beyond anybody's comprehension why you would put fentanyl in fucking even marijuana, all right? You think you're going to make marijuana so addictive? No, there's another motive behind it, clearly. There's one motive that says, you know, people might get more addicted to certain substances that are laced with fentanyl because fentanyl is more addictive than heroin. That's just a fact. Fentanyl, the buzz don't last quite as long, so you got to do more of it or something like that. I don't really know because I don't do opioids, but that's what I've read. That's what I've heard. LSD, man. Fentanyl and LSD. That is very, very suspicious. I mean, there's nothing more suspicious than that. This is so suspicious that I suspect that sooner or later, a whistleblower is going to pop up and be like, yo, I was in this police room where we were like taking evidence, fentanyl, bags of fentanyl, and just mixing it with everything just to fucking, maybe. And what would be the motive for this? Well, somebody that's a real big time asshole, anti-drug, prohibitionist type person that works in the government, that has access to all this drugs incoming, or I don't know, it'd be a wide conspiracy at this point. Or even, because of the internet, it doesn't have to be a wide conspiracy. It could just be a few people around the country that work in the prohibition movement somehow that has access to any of these drugs. I mean, we're seeing isolated incidences right now, like very, it's peppered out throughout the whole country. Like you can find in Ohio, you got, like, I did a search earlier and it was ridiculous. Like if you just search like fentanyl laced in the Google search and hit the news button, it's, you're seeing it from coast to coast, every drug in the book being laced with it. And a lot of times people are dying because of this shit. And one of the things that you're seeing a trend of is fentanyl, where people press it into things like fake Xanax or fake Vicodin pills. That's a huge killer right now. That's racking up some numbers. I've seen headlines almost consistently every month of that. So it's ridiculous. But back to the subject at hand. When you see it popping up in shit that it doesn't belong in, like cocaine or meth, like that just seems like weird. Like only specific people that do what you call speedballs would even be into something like that, right? You would think. So anyway, let me just go ahead and read this, because here's another person that is on this train of thinking with me, and it would be REILLY CAPPS over here at Rooster, which, to be honest, I've never even heard of Rooster before I looked for this fentanyl-laced LSD shit, and I ran into this, and I looked at some of their other headlines that they're running, and overall, they look legitimate to me, man. There's, with a heavy emphasis on psychedelics and marijuana stories. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and recommend them. And also you'll like the grammar too if you like my channel. So why the fuck is fentanyl showing up in LSD, meth, and cocaine? The opioid epidemic is infecting the wider world of drugs. The super powerful, addictive, and deadly opioids, fentanyl and carfentanil, are killing thousands of people who are hooked on the warm, nodding high of these heroin-like drugs. But these drugs are now occasionally fucking with people who aren't trying to do opioids. People who are trying to feel the wavy beauty of LSD, or the exuberant euphoria of cocaine, or the energetic focus of meth. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make my own disclaimer before I go further on reading this article that, this video is not made with the intention of glamorizing drug use or recommending anybody to use any drugs for any reason, recreationally or otherwise. And I am reading an article written by somebody else also. But to get back to the earlier disclaimer, this video is only made for educational purposes. Period. Then the reason that I say this is because, I could sit here and talk about my own personal drug use throughout my life or whatever, and tell you how many times I've tripped on LSD, countlessly or whatever. But I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to make this about me. I just want this to be educational, because if somebody watches my videos, has watched previous videos that I've made about this fentanyl laced blank, like fill in the blank, I've made videos about these things. And when I did, I wasn't convinced that this was a really, something that I was confused. Like, why would there be fentanyl in cocaine? I've evolved, and this is an educational video that I'm making to try to be, this is kind of like to scream fire because I see a fire. This is some shit going down that people need to be aware of. I've been saying for a long time, like over 10 years, that if you buy cocaine on the street, you better believe that it's probably not cocaine, or if it is, it's very little cocaine. But now cocaine, if you buy cocaine on the street, there's a chance you could die doing it. That's ridiculous. So this is just an educational video. I don't condone advocating for drug use. That's not something I do. And I don't feel like the author of this is doing that either. The author seems to be painting the people that are trying to do certain drugs for a certain reason. They're saying, hey, they're not looking for fentanyl, which is like a super intense, opioid buzz. And I don't want to like paint that picture with words, because then I would be glorifying, right? Then that wouldn't no longer be an educational video if I did it. But now I'm reading somebody else. So anyway, I feel like that disclaimer was good. And if this video gets a strike, whatever. Because the environment we're working within on YouTube right now is definitely not conducive to people like me sitting here telling you the truth and trying to educate the public about shit like Kratom and fentanyl and stuff. So, whatever. I'm going to keep doing what I do. If I get fucking kicked for it, or if this video gets smashed, whatever, man. We'll document that too and talk about that. So I'm going to finish it up. On acid tabs handed out at a concert this weekend in Chicago. And remember, this article was originally published April 4th, 2018. So kind of old news on that front. But anyway, that's where this person that wrote this article first heard about the fentanyl on the acid, and it was at a Chicago concert. According to a post on Facebook and conversations with 2 people who were there, 12 people were hauled out of the show, a concert goer told Rooster. 2 were in critical condition. It scared Leah Bartolotta, who attended the Bass Nectar concert, as security guards rushed by her escorting a sick person out. It wasn't just that one show. Acid laced with fentanyl, which is a drug 50 times stronger than heroin, is a real thing, authorities confirm. In Quebec last month, cops said they seized blotter paper that looks like acid, but which contains carfentanil. Carfentanil is the cousin of fentanyl, but 100 times as powerful. An amount the size of a coarse grain of salt can kill you. Quote, this is particularly concerning because this sample was on blotter containing the famous Albert Hoffman bicycle ride print, which has been used to distribute LSD for decades, says Dance Safe, a goer-trusted company that tests drugs on site at concerts and festivals. Now, that's an interesting statement there, because if you want to rewind this video back when I was talking about the ongoing conspiracy theory that the government is the ones that actually have filled in the gaps of provision for things like LSD, heroin, cocaine. LSD can be made in the lab, but it's not really made in the lab enough to probably keep up with the demand that there is for it. Unless you're talking about big labs, like back in the 60s, the demand was pretty heavy when Sandoz began making blotter paper, acid. So, again, this is some of the blotter paper that we've seen for a long time. It's consistently in the scene. Obviously, everybody knows that takes acid that there was the Albert Hoffman, first dose where he took probably what would be 10,000 hits or some shit, and he rode his bike home. It's been long suggested by many that the US government has a big stake in the supply lines of LSD in America, because the penalties for holding on to quantities or manufacturing LSD are so severe. And when you think about that, it's not just to curb the, back people. It's to scare people, obviously, so that everybody with a lab don't just start cranking out LSD. But at the same time, it also seems like whenever the government regulates something really heavily in favor of corporations instead of small producers, it usually comes with heavy-handed penalties if you go against the grain. Anyway, back to the article. No one has known to have died from any of this LSD laced with fentanyl. Now, as far as when this article was written, that was July 5th. So this isn't too old that this article was actually written this time. And I'm imagining that if that changed, we would have known about it. I haven't heard anything about it. In my recent search, I didn't see anything about anybody. But cocaine laced with fentanyl has, in fact, killed people. 30, 40, 50-year-olds are celebrating their big birthday with a line of cocaine and keeling over, NPR reported last week. And regular cocaine users report feeling the expected rush, and then falling asleep. And just this afternoon, Dance Safe reported that fentanyl was found in meth in Portland. And I want to say it was either Dance Safe or their affiliate. I think it was their affiliate. I hate that I don't know, because that was just the story I reported on, but that they found fentanyl and cocaine at the Electric Forest Festival in Michigan that I attended. So that's one of the enlightening moments that I had, is when I realized, this shit is everywhere, and we can no longer deny that there's fentanyl laced cocaine, whatever else, It should, finding fentanyl in cocaine, meth, or LSD is very rare, according to experts. It should stay rare because it doesn't make any sense. Charts teach you which drugs enhance the feeling of other drugs and therefore are cool to mix. MDA and mushrooms is a popular one. MDMA and mushrooms, rather. And this is according to the article again I'm reading. But fentanyl, carfentanil plus cocaine, LSD is a baffling combination of drugs, a real pharmaceutical head scratcher. See, fentanyl is a downer. It slows your heart and your thinking, and cocaine speeds them up. Fentanyl dims the world, LSD brightens it. It's like making someone a Cobb salad and then topping it with ninja throwing stars. Ninja throwing stars have their place, but in Cobb salad, they'll cut the shit out of your lip. So why is this happening? People who know the drug scene have given the Rooster a few theories. It might be an accident, a mistake. Drug labs aren't always the tidiest places, and the tiniest speck of carfentanil misplaced is like a wrecking ball. Now, the reason I don't like this theory is because people that are messing around with these so-called drug labs or whatever, unless you're talking about just somebody in the back of a freaking station wagon before the concert, like trying to make some shit that'll sell. I don't think these people are just like that loose-handed with things like carfentanil and fentanyl. Because that shit ain't that cheap. It might be cheap, but it ain't that cheap. Anyway, it might be, back to the article, it might be a shady dealer's tactic to get folks hooked on drugs who aren't very savvy about drugs. Put fentanyl in your LSD. Maybe someone thinks LSD makes you feel happy, warm and dopey, and suddenly wants to do more of your LSD. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But that would be like a shady dealer who is gonna risk killing somebody. I don't know, man. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet on that evolution. I don't think there's shady dealers out there that are gonna just like willy-nilly throw carfentanil on LSD because maybe they'll come back for more. It's LSD, man. People don't usually come back for more unless they come back because it was a ripoff and they need more just to get off. Anyway, back to the article again. It might just be deliberate, old school, misanthropic fuckery happening for the same reason folks shoot up at high schools, troll rape survivors on Twitter, and take a shit on their neighbor's barbecue grill. They're motherless sociopaths. I mean, not it does. That is pretty weird to say that there's motherless sociopaths out there that are so vindictive against society that they're gonna lace some street drugs with some deadly fentanyl or carfentanil. It doesn't. I don't know, man. I don't see that. I don't really. I mean, unless you're talking about, like I said earlier, those government thugs that make sure that the heroin trade goes on without missing a beat, so no addict ever goes Jonesy. You know what I mean? Like, those are motherless sociopaths, aren't they? I don't understand this one. If somebody wants to hurt a lot of people, there's other ways to do it, and people just don't do that kind of thing on a regular basis. You must have to really, really hate drug users to take the stance of, well, you know, I just happen to have this stash of carfentanil that I can lace a bunch of hits of LSD with and then go fuck up the whole rave scene. I just, that's the most bizarre out there theory I've ever heard of. As a matter of fact, all three of these theories are pretty straight up garbage in my opinion. In my opinion, and I know everybody's going to call me the conspiracy theory nut job. Like it's kind of like the ongoing theme lately with all this shit going on. And I'm, oh, you're fake news because you said the government laced the fentanyl into the LSD and the cocaine and all the other shit. I'm not saying that that's what's happening. I'm just saying if you look at the ongoing theory that people have been talking about for decades, and there's factual there's evidence to back this theory up. There's witness testimony from former CIA agents and DEA agents and shit. Somehow I'm supposed to throw away all that shit and trust one of these theories, or maybe even come up with my own. I can't come up with any fucking reason why there would be fentanyl in LSD. That's just a mind-cracking, like, what? There's absolutely no fucking way that I can come up with any viable theory other than the same reason that you always see this shit. Let's finish this article off real fast because I got some more shit to say. As always, the advice is to know your drugs at least as well as you know your coffee or your free-range chicken. Know your supplier. Try to meet the chemist. Test very small amounts before bathing your brain in unknown molecules, or use the darknet to read reviews. I think the one thing that was said here, test that shit. If you're doing, again, this is an educational video. I'm not here advocating drug use or illicit drug sales or use or any of that shit. But if you are going to go there and go use some illicit substance, there's test kits available. There's Regency makes them. You can find this Dance Safe and other organizations like that. I think there's only like 2 big ones. And then there's probably some other people trying to start up some shit. And what they do is they are right there at the scene, at the party, at the festival or the rave or whatever it is. And they sell kits to test your shit. You got something, you want to test it to make sure that it doesn't have fentanyl in it. Can we make a simple test that everybody can have? That would be great, man. Who could, that's the problem with these things is people call it socialism or something like, and then they demonize it like, oh, you don't want to make something that everybody has for free that they could just test their drugs with. There's so many people that would be against it. But to make it all simple, we could just make it so it's a test for fentanyl. It's either yes or no on fentanyl, and whatever you got, you can test it to see if it has fentanyl in it. Because until we know why or how the fentanyl is getting into these drugs that it definitely shouldn't be in, you know, and of course there's motives behind doing this kind of shit. And it is to scare people out of doing drugs. Or to give the fucking naloxone people more business. And both of those sound really shady, but both of those also depend on the drugs coming from the people that gave us the fucking same drugs that have been around since the 60s, and they've only gotten more prevalent and more potent in society. We're talking about LSD, heroin, and cocaine. All three of them are cheaper than they were in the 60s. LSD might not be more potent than it was in the 60s, but it's more probably, there's probably more ways that LSD has been synthesized that people find to be better than the stuff that came from the 60s. I don't know. And then you'll hear those old people from the 60s, they'll be like, no, man, that was the best acid ever. My guess is the government probably makes the best acid ever. And they probably have something to do with this shit too. But that's just my crazy, wild, out there running theory that I'm going with that's been around for a long time. And Dance Safe also recommends testing your drugs. They sell fentanyl test strips for as little as $2. So there you have that. But damn, who thought you'd have to test your LSD for fentanyl or your cocaine or your meth? And I'm guessing if you're doing meth out there, guys, there's always a chance that there's something shady going on with the meth. It's one of the hardest things to make really good pure form shit from unless you have access to the right lab and the right chemicals. So a lot of people are just making some bullshit garbage in their bathtub. And yeah, be careful out there. This is an educational video. There is fentanyl in everything. Pretty soon we're going to have to test the oatmeal. All right, like and subscribe. Peace out. And if you if you don't like my videos, you don't have to watch them. Straight up. Peace out, man.